Thinking about how I navigate the world as a woman of color is a really difficult question for me to answer because at my core, I am a Black woman, and I think that that lives in very nuanced ways. It comes a lot across in my storytelling as a poet. I talk a lot about being Black. I reference a lot of cultural things that are important to Black Americans. And I think sometimes I'm very conscious of that identity. And sometimes, like I said, it's just such a part of my being that I'm not necessarily thinking about it. I do think that in spaces where there's not other people who reflect my background, I'm probably thinking about it a lot more and being a lot more intentional about the way that I navigate certain spaces. But it's not always something that is at the forefront of my mind. Sometimes it's just so deeply ingrained in my identity. There are so many women of color who have influenced my journey this past year. At the beginning of the year, I decided that I really wanted to read literature by women who have influenced my voice as a writer. So I have been deeply studying Audre Lorde, who I call like my mother, because she has certainly raised me, certainly helped me to understand how identity is so ingrained in the work that we do. Another author is Sandra Cisneros. So Sandra Cisneros just wonderfully and deeply talks about culture in her writing, in such, again, like nuanced ways that have inspired my voice as a writer. And then I would say actually the women in my family. So I've been on an ancestry journey to reconnect with my dad's biological father, and through doing that work, have learned so many stories about the women in my family and the women who have just had to sacrifice so much and persevere through so many things in order for me to be who and where I am today. And in learning their stories, I have seen so much of myself in them. For example, my grandfather had an aunt named Cora. And when he got dementia, he used to always call me Cora, and we could never figure out like who or why that was. And in going through his family photos, we found a picture of his aunt, and she looks just like me. And hearing some of the stories about my grandmother when she was my age and realizing that she was like pretty wild and unconventional for her time just helped me to realize that every version of ourselves is based on a previous version of someone else who we are like connected to. And learning about the women in my family who are women of color has opened my eyes and helped me to understand myself better. So one of the questions that I get consistently asked is, what are you? And this question is always so interesting to me because, one, I think it's a dehumanizing question, or it can be. And then two, I always wonder why people are asking it. What I think sometimes is that people need or have a need to categorize us so that they can understand the world better. And in my mind, this often can lead to stereotyping and like biases. So I resent that question a lot. And as I was mulling over this question and preparing to like send you a video, it forced me to write a poem about the like changing nature of identity. I think oftentimes people think that identity is this very like concrete thing that never ever changes, but throughout the course of history, through who we interact with and like what goes on in our world, we develop ways of identifying ourselves. And so one of my journeys as an artist and as a person has been not only to be able to like unpack that question, but to understand like where it comes from. So I'm sharing this poem that I wrote and sharing this response as well. Thank you guys so much for challenging me artistically. And I look forward to reading other people's thoughts on the interesting questions that you posed. I am transatlantic cargo American. I am Irish Catholic famine American. I am seeking reparations, caravan along the Mississippi. We will sponsor you, first and second great migration American. I am Wade in the water, Emancipation Proclamation. I have a dream, crack epidemic, hip hop raised me, zero tolerance, Black Lives Matter, say her name, American. I am Hendersonville, North Carolina.